The the alternate Magnolia arc is just Austin and Pippin's relationship.
This is a thing that happens. I adopt a 20-pound cat.
Welcome back, everyone. Austin, Nick.
Hello.
It's been a bit, but today we're going to get into Magnolia. This is obviously because we only talk about movies that we like pretty much so far. This is another one of my favorites. Uh, that is pretty true, though.
No, I know. It's funny to say it out loud.
Yeah.
We really
Uh,
should we should do one where we all hate it and just shit on it for like an hour. We
we,
should do
we we honestly should
we should
because
do
that will be funny.
that.
We gotta.
Okay, sorry,
We'll
continue.
talk after which one that would be.
Yeah, yeah, go.
But yeah, Magnolia is directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. It's his third feature. He is 29 when he makes this film, which is incredibly impressive considering all the storylines that it juggles and just how it presents itself as a packaged movie. It's immediately after Boogie Nights, which kind of is his breakout movie. And it's almost structured the same exact way. It has a lot of the same kinetic camera movements and storytelling editing techniques that he likes to use. And it shows him kind of going in a more mature direction with his storytelling. Although I don't think it's necessarily as effective as Boogie Nights, it does show him maturing as a director, and it's definitely a very fun watch. Um, just some stuff about PTA, I guess, as background into this. Like I said, he immediately starts work on this movie while he's writing Boogie Nights, well, actually, while he's filming Boogie Nights. And once Boogie Nights becomes a success, the distributor, I think New Line is the distributor for this movie, they immediately give him final cut for what would become Magnolia. And so PTA is like, I'm going to make just this crazy epic movie about the San Fernando Valley, which is pretty much every PTA movie. I mean, Boogie Nights is about the San Fernando Valley. And so is Inherent Vice and then Licorice Pizza. Like, he loves making these kinds of movies. And I think Magnolia is a good example of like this very kind of nostalgic look on human relationships with each other in sort of a epic storytelling format.
I love this movie. I don't generally like really emotional melodramatic movies, but this one's pretty touching, and there's a lot of characters that you can find yourself empathizing with. It's a really gripping movie.
What are you laughing
Sorry,
at?
I say grippy.
Okay, that is a little funny. That is a little funny.
Really gripping movie. There's a lot of really cool hidden things that I picked up on. Some of them I found myself. Some of them I kind of was poking around on the internet, seeing what other people were talking about that I thought were really cool, that he threw in there. And I mean, I like the message of the movie. The message is kind of accepting the past, um, not trying to change things, just moving forward with what you have now.
Yeah, for me, I think when I like initially started it and I saw the 3 hour runtime, I was like a little concerned. I was like, gosh, this is gonna be long. Like I hope this can stay as engaging as I hope it can for 3 hours. And it did honestly for the most part. Obviously, like the little middle section was a little long, but I just liked how interconnected all the characters were, and like as the audience, like you felt they were interconnected, but when you were watching it, like the characters in the story didn't necessarily see themselves as being connected. And so I kind of liked how like watching that play out and how like the decisions that other characters made kind of connected to the other characters. And like the other characters would perceive it as like a inconvenience or like, oh, what is life doing to me? And just to like continue what Austin was saying, like just like accepting that life can be unpredictable and that you can't control all of it and that like you know sometimes like life happens and you just kind of got to accept that And I really like that part of the movie, or at least what it was trying to say there. Um, what else did I like? I mean, honestly, yeah, that was kind of it for the most part in terms of just what I connected with the most was just accepting the absurdity of life sometimes and just just laughing at it a little bit and moving on. But yeah, we can talk about the individual characters too, but I really liked all the characters, honestly. Like none of them really bothered me all that much, which is pretty rare for movies. Usually in a movie, I get absolutely peeved with a character or two, but this one I didn't really like. I liked all the characters, and I liked how all of them had a distinct personality. So okay,
But I want to go off what you said because I like how you said that you don't the characters don't necessarily see how they are related to each other, but they are.
yeah,
And yeah, I think that that is key because obviously the intro of the movie, it's the Amy Mann cover of the song One, and it just plays. It's a beautiful song. I love that song, and it just plays out all of the I guess our initial takes on our introduction to each character. And it's playing one is the loneliest number, one is the loneliest number all throughout. And
no,
all the characters do
yeah.
feel alone and separate. And but they're not. They like you said, they don't necessarily realize how all of their lives are connected and how their stories relate to each other. And at a thematic base level, they all feel this sense of hope and wanting redemption. I think that's probably one of the best parts of the movie. And if you're gonna get anyone into this movie, PTA does it perfectly here with these he does two intros essentially. He does the first intro, which is kind of like the thematic introduction to the story where he's explaining coincidences and all these strange phenomena that have happened before in history. And he's
Mhm.
basically telling the audience like, hey, this is going to be another example of these sorts of things that actually happen. And then he has the actual character introduction, which is my favorite part of the film because it's just so breathtaking. The Magnolia opens up, it's playing the song, and we get kind of these rapid fire introduction edits of all of our main characters. And immediately we see in a very kinetic way how they all relate to each other. And then the story just unravels following Jim Curring, which is John C. Riley's character. And then we kind of go down the rabbit hole of where the story twists and turns and intersects with everyone else's storyline. I think that is one of the best things that this movie does is introducing us to the 10 characters that we have here. I guess kind of the center of this is Earl Partridge. At
Yeah,
least that's kind of what I came to a conclusion with because Earl he owns the TV station, and the TV
yeah.
station is linked to Quiz Kid Donnie Smith. It's linked to Stanley. Uh, Obviously, Stanley and his father is a relationship offshoot of that. And then there's Jimmy Gator, who's the host of the show, and then his wife and the relationship of his daughter. And then his daughter is related to, or not related, but in the relationship of Jim Curring, and Earl is being serviced by Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, and then he also has his wife Linda Partridge, played by Julianne Moore. So Earl is kind of the and then of course Frank T.J. Mackey is Earl's son, very
Yeah.
estranged son, which is the best storyline in my opinion of the entire movie. And so yeah, he's kind of the centerfold for all of these stories here, and he is the link. And I think PTA does this intentionally because from what I was able to find, um, he had the title Magnolia in his head for when he wanted to make this movie. So there's that. And then when he did research about magnolia trees, apparently one of the benefits of eating the bark was people thought it would cure cancer. So I think from that, he made that Earl Partridge's character. And then that's how all the other offshoots sprout from it.
I didn't like those scenes in particular. I don't know how to describe. I don't know why I didn't like the scenes. I think it was just bothered me that it couldn't talk and he was just being annoying. Like it was just the little fragments of information that he would give was it took so much thinking to like finally put his character in place and realize that he was this like the center of the spoken wheel. he was the thing that connected all the different characters.
Like Earl, as a character, I mean, he's not so much of a character throughout the movie as he is a device for the movie, for the story of the movie to move forward. Because, I mean, throughout the movie, he doesn't really, he as a character doesn't do much. It's a lot of the other characters doing things because of him, which normally would feel kind of lazy that you have a character that doesn't do anything. But I think PTA's ability to have the actors do really emotional scenes, at least in that storyline, it kind of makes it believable, and it makes it something that you can kind of get with. I think I know you said that Frank T.J. Mackey is that's your favorite storyline. I Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's probably the best one. It's interesting talking about Tom Cruise's character, Frank T.J. Mackey. So the movie is about accepting the past and accepting your regrets and using them to move forward and not fighting about the meaning of life and stuff. It's kind of just roll with the punches. And Frank T.J. Mackey is the only character that throughout the movie is like actively fighting what's going on in his life. Um, I mean, he hates his father, but refuses to acknowledge anything about his father until it's like brought directly to him, and there's nothing he can do about it. Um, I don't know, that sense of like the sense of him running from his past is such a huge. It's so different from the rest of the arcs of the characters, and then towards him at the very end, where he reconciles with his dying father, is really beautiful.
Yeah, I think because out of all the characters, Tom Cruise is pretty much the only one who's initially presented as the like, here's a guy who has it all type character, where all the other characters, you immediately understand that they feel like they have nothing and they're looking for meaning. Tom Cruise's character is supremely confident. He's very charismatic. And like I said, you feel like he has everything, but then you realize that he has probably the most emotional baggage, and that, like you said, he's the one actively fighting all of his emotions the entire time. And he probably has the hardest breakdown in the end as well. Him and Linda are the two characters that have just the strongest breakdown in the end because they can't handle their emotions.
Yeah, I mean
So
another
yeah, it's
thing,
great.
like Frank T.J. Mackey, like throughout the movie when he's talking to all those guys in his audience, like all he's talking about is taking control of yourself, like yourself, your future, control over the relationships of the people around you. Which I don't know. I mean, it's obvious that PTA set it up to be a stark contrast to the theme of the movie, so he could break it down at the end, which was really good to see. It was really interesting.
Yeah, and I think Tom Cruise does a great job at the performance because obviously it pretty much is like him in real life as a character. like like whether or not he realizes that or not. Like it literally is just him. Um, but I mean, he also does sell the emotion incredibly well. I think like other than him meeting with his father at the end, when he's doing the interview with the woman, and I again, um, it's a great choice by PTA to have a woman of color interview him because obviously the moment she gets under his skin, he loses it. He literally loses it because he feels threatened, and she starts poking around his emotions and kind of destroying his manhood and everything that he's built up for in the image that he presents to the world. It's a very good deconstruction of his character in that interview scene.
Um, I mean, I something that I noticed this time around. I didn't really think much about it, but so his assistant, I forgot what the name of his assistant was, but there's a scene where he's going to give the phone to Tom Cruise, and he's talking to a couple guys about like breaking down a feminist so you can sleep with one. And then he gets a call from his boss, and it's a woman who treats him like shit.
Yeah, oh my God. And like he literally just shuts down at that one point in the interview and she's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm silently judging you."
Bro,
Like
he went nonverbal, dude.
yeah,
Literally.
he literally goes nonverbal.
Dude, my favorite part about his character, the entire time, I was just like, holy crap, this is this is 90s Andrew Tate. It was like perfect, dude. It was so funny because
It
like
is. It
the
is.
interview was like almost a one-to-one interview when Andrew Tate when any feminist interviews him or just something. The mo they say a trigger word and he goes nonverbal and he's like, I don't want to talk to you anymore.
It's oh my
It was
God.
perfect. I was like,
It's
seriously, like the oh my gosh, it just it was so that selling the hyper masculinity, like I really liked that. But the whole time that's all I could think of when I saw his character. And it made it much more interesting to watch because then I was like, oh, I want to see Frank again. Like his
yes.
character was the best because you knew what was gonna happen at the end. Like you kind of knew. You were like, okay, I see what's happening here, and you just wanted to see the breakdown. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there because I just thought it was funny to watch.
It's good because I mean you don't necessarily empathize. Yeah, empathize with him as a character, but I mean I did feel sympathy at the end for sure because he's finally confronting like the emotional baggage that's been tormenting his whole life at the end of it
Yeah,
and looking for that approval in his dying father, and he just absolutely I mean, it would destroy anyone. And so it's still, even though it's an insane, outlandish character, you're still able to feel
yeah,
sad for him in that moment.
yeah. I think I mean because his character at the end of the day, like yeah, his character is just the thing, you have PTSD as a kid, and then you create this character for yourself basically to fight against the PTSD, and I'm pretty like a lot of people connect with that, regardless of like his character just happened to be a womanizer, but at the end, people recognize the facade, the creation of that character now is falling apart at the end, so that's where I sympathize with him at the end. So
Yeah, one of my favorite scenes with him is actually right after the interview with the interviewer, when he goes back on stage, and you can tell that he's
yeah,
like very obviously rattled.
oh yeah.
And he like, open up your book to page 18 of your blue book, and then he just kicks over a table. He's like, your white book.
Yeah, oh my God. Yeah, he can't even get into his routine.
Yeah, but it's I mean it was important for him to have that moment with the interviewer where he gets rattled and he gets shook because he wouldn't have made the trip to his father if he didn't get like shaken up like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um, okay. We'll talk about another character. How about Phil? Phil is one of my favorite characters in this movie. I think Phil is the only character in the movie that doesn't have any like explained baggage, emotional baggage of him going in.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah, he's just there um, to be a facilitator of
Yeah.
what happens with Frank T.J. Mackey's character. And no, it's funny. He's kind of funny to watch. I mean, he plays Philip Seymour Hoffman. He's a really mild mannered guy who does what does what the movie needs of him in that scene. You know, I mean, he's the nurse. He has an emotional connection with Earl Partridge, so Earl gives him a dying request, and Phil's arc of the movie is making that request come true. And along the way, he buys a bunch of porn mags and cigarettes for
Looking for
someone who's
Frank.
dying of lung cancer.
Looking for Frank.
Yeah. Well, He's like I like Phil as a character, right? But I feel like he's severely underutilized in this movie. He's of all the characters here, like yes, he's the one that doesn't really have emotional baggage, but he also is kind of just one dimensional. He's there to be an emotional hospice nurse, and he doesn't really have anything else to work with. And it's Philip Seymour Hoffman we're talking about. Like we've seen him do so many richer performances over this one. So I like him as a character, but I just don't really feel like he goes anywhere with this performance in the movie.
Well, I mean, I don't think that Phil as a character that he was supposed to have like an emotional arc like the rest of the characters. I think that the plan for his character was to be the facilitator of Earl Partridge's story. Um, I mean, you could say that his character would be better if he did have an arc, but I mean, I like him kind of just as he is.
The thing that was getting me is because I don't really like John C. Riley's portrayal of Jim Curring, the cop. And then I thought, what if he was replaced with Phil Parma? And if Phil was the one who was dating like this emotionally unstable girl, and then he's also the hospice nurse for Earl Partridge, and then like that breaks him down, and then he has Jimmy Gator's daughter, who's also just a really broken down character, but he also really cares about her and wants to help fix her because he's that nice facilitator type character. I just feel like if they took it in that direction, Philip Seymour Hoffman could have really knocked it out of the park rather than
Well,
just
they if they took it in that direction, it would have been Philip Seymour Hoffman's character from Happiness.
kind of. And that's the moment where he's buying the porn. That literally is his character from Happiness. It's so funny. Like I don't know. It just felt a little too constrained. Like I do agree with you. I don't think his character is supposed to have an arc, but compared to everyone else who does, it feels underutilized for Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have another thing that to say about Phil when we talk about it later because it's more of a theme of the movie. Other characters related to Earl Partridge is Linda Partridge, played by Julianne Moore. Fantastic performance.
Uh-oh.
Okay,
Is this
I
the
don't think
character?
so.
Is
no
this
Yeah,
the
way.
character?
You
I
don't
don't
like
think
Linda?
so.
You don't like
Linda,
Linda
Um,
Partridge?
Linda,
I
Linda.
I love Julianne Moore
Yeah.
in everything except this movie. I just think it's way too much. Like she is just absolutely batshit crazy in a way that's not entertaining at all. So it's just really sad to watch her. And yeah, again, it's Magnolia. That is the point of the movie. But it's. I think that's where this movie, that part, and then when they're all singing the same goddamn song, that and Linda Partridge, that's when the movie becomes too melodramatic for me. It brings it back down pretty good, but the moments with Linda Partridge and some of the other cheesier moments, it's too much drama
I
How
mean,
did
in my
how
opinion.
how did her character relate to any of the others, or was her character just singularly her own struggle,
It's
or
just
did
her
she?
own struggle with
What'd you
like
say, Austin? Sorry, you broke up.
it's just like her struggle because of
Yeah,
her relationship with Earl. I mean, she is
yeah.
at her wits' end because there's a person that she loves that's dying in front of her, and I mean, I can understand that.
Was
And
she connected to Frank at all in some way? Like, did Frank know about her? I can't remember
yeah,
exactly.
I mean,
Kind of.
Frank and Linda knew of each other, but like they didn't like each other
Yeah,
because Linda is like the same age as him and is
yeah.
his like pseudo mom essentially.
Hmm.
yeah, I
Okay.
just the scene of her in the doctor's office, I don't think it adds really anything to her character other than you just get more of a sense that, she's whacked out emotionally and because of the drugs that she's taking. It's just, yeah, I mean, I just think it's way
I think
too
it's
Oscar.
believable. I mean, there
What?
are people that act like that. I mean,
Yeah, but I think Julianne Moore's performance is just Oscar baiting. Like he, I say this
Yeah.
because a year before this, she does Boogie Nights, and she plays kind of the same character in Boogie Nights, but it's so much better handled in that movie. And in Boogie Nights, at least, she has like the arc with her children and how like she goes into the porn industry and that like destroys like her relationship with the children. And her performance is more subtle in that. This is just like there's
well, I mean,
no redeeming factor. I personally don't care that she dies in the movie. Like it's a terrible thing that happens, but there's nothing for me emotionally to latch onto to like feel sympathy for her.
well, I mean, yeah, like she is probably a bad person in the movie, but I mean, her arc is to show. I mean, the movie is about like accepting your regrets in life, and she has all these regrets that are like eating her alive, and she's unable to reconcile with them because the person that she wronged is not like barely a character in the movie because I mean, he's unconscious for half the movie, so there's nothing she can do about it.
Yeah, and she's like Tom Cruise to where she just can't handle not having that control. But I think Tom Cruise handles that sort of
And then
mentality
like,
better.
well, they also gave Tom Cruise's character a lot more to bite on than
Yes,
Julianne.
true.
Yeah,
He's
so I
way
mean,
more
like,
developed.
yeah, because all Linda gets to do in the movie is be neurotic to every
Yeah,
person she's around.
and all she does is just don't you talk about this man. It's too much, dude. Like it really is.
But I
Yeah, I
mean,
don't know.
I know I see it as what happens when you're unable to let go of your regrets and how self-destructive it is. And that's why she's so over the top with her performance, is you can see it like destroying her throughout the movie. And then she ultimately like tries to kill herself.
Hmm.
Yeah, and no, I get it. It's just personally for me, it takes me out of it a bit. But I do understand why she's written the way she is in the movie.
Yeah, Donnie Smith
I
is
love
like
that.
the saddest character in the movie.
Yeah, one
It
of
But
them.
really
I mean,
is.
they're all
yeah,
sad, but
Donnie's character reminds me of like all of those kids in early middle school who were told that they were like super smart and they were in all the advanced classes only to grow up and realize that they were just advanced when they were young and that they were normal people like when they grew up later in life like or they like stopped trying or something like that and like then they realize it actually takes work to stay smart and it's not just like total natural ability. I don't know. It just reminded me of those kind of people growing up who just end up being normal adults later in life.
And
he even says it like in the movie where he just feels stupid because
Yeah.
he can't like grasp other concepts of life, like having a relationship. Like he feels so strongly towards the bartender, but he doesn't have like the courage or the articulation to explain his emotions, and it just eats away at him. And at the end, he's just like, "My name is Donnie Smith, and I have a lot of love to give." And I love that line because it's so simple. That's all it took, and he finally like gets the courage to say it, but then he's still shut down because of that fucking other gay dude who's like trying to buy the bartender. Which that character pisses me off.
Yeah.
it's I that character is really interesting. Like I was watching it again, and when they're playing Goodbye Stranger when Donnie walks into the
Yes,
bar,
yes.
which is a fantastic song choice. But it even sets him up to be the antagonist because, like, right when it cuts to the guy for the first time, it's the line "Say that the devil is my savior," and right when it says "devil," it cuts to him,
I didn't even never even notice that, but
which
Yeah,
is
I
pretty
didn't know.
clever.
yeah, no, that guy is so nefarious. and such a dick for no fucking reason to Donnie. God, yeah, that's a part of the movie that infuriates me because I think of all the characters, Donnie is my favorite character, by the way. But of all the characters, I'm rooting for Donnie the most because he's one of the more pure characters. Well, I mean, Jim is obviously a pure character too, but like Donnie, he is a smart guy, and he's just so unlucky for a lot of his life, and he feels that he is worthless because of the luck that he's had in his life rather than his own actions, and it really gets to him. And so I really feel for him in that, and I want him to succeed. And the only thing he really wants is to fall in love and to have love. And he feels so worthless that he can't even have that. So like I really want Donnie Smith's character to achieve that. And then there's the whole bar scene where he's kind of just destroyed again when he didn't do anything wrong.
You know, I mean, it is really sad. I mean, someone who was like a child prodigy, and then arguably it had something to do with it. He got struck by lightning, which itself is really unlucky.
Yeah.
And then he lives out like all the money that he won on the game show. His parents stole from him because they didn't really care about him. And then now, like he's compared to where he was once in his life, he's now like a relatively like a failure. I mean, he works as a salesman in like an electronics store, and his boss is firing him at the beginning of the movie.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I agree with Kurt. Like, out of all the characters, the person I want to see win is Donnie.
Yeah.
My name is Donnie Smith, and I have a lot of love to give.
I have a lot of love.
Like it's just such a pure thing to say, and that's really all he's looking for. It's how can you not root for the guy?
It is
And
not dangerous to confuse children with angels.
oh my god, yeah, that's what he says to him. God, it's uh and then even the unluckiness continues because like Nick was saying off camera, he's the one who's hit by the goddamn frog and he breaks his teeth.
Well, he's the one character like kind of doing something right though at the end like that. You know what I mean? I feel like he was
It's
actively doing something correct. He was going back and putting the things away.
Yes.
And then he gets struck down. It's like
Exactly.
it's funny in that sense where the
I
one
mean, it's so ironic because I mean,
yeah.
he spends the entire movie like hatching a scheme to get money for braces he doesn't
Yeah.
need, and then he fucks up his teeth. So now he
Oh yeah.
now he doesn't even go get braces. Since we're talking about Donnie, we can kind of talk about the other half of characters. So I mean, like in the movie, there's kind of like two trees of characters, right? So there's the Earl Partridge tree, and then there's the Jimmy Gator tree, and they're related by the relationship of Jimmy Gator working for a show that's on Earl Partridge's network, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So Jimmy Gator is the show host for What Do Kids Know, which is the thing that connects all the storylines in the movie. Essentially, is that show. So Donnie Smith was on it when he was a kid, way back when. Jimmy Gator is the show host. We follow Stanley throughout the movie as well. Stanley is one of the current contestants in the present day. And then, so talk about Jimmy Gator.
He is one of the worst characters in the movie because he
Oh
kind
yeah,
of just he gaslights his wife and rapes his daughter.
Oh my
Um,
God.
so yeah, he
I'm
literally
so
is one of
yeah.
the worst characters. But I mean, he's also just like he's so filled with regret to where it's again like most of these characters, like that emotional aspect of him is just so sad to watch unfold. Where he can't even like he literally passes out on stage, and then when he's talking to his wife after, he can't even form coherent thoughts because he's just so riddled with guilt and he knows he's going to die very soon.
Um, Speaking of his daughter, is Claudia, who is quite the performance. It's a crazy performance to watch.
Yeah, see, her craziness And her portrayal of that, I think, is the right way to do it versus how Julianne Moore does Linda Partridge. Because, yeah, Claudia, I think, is the right level of just like, this is a girl who's been fucked up for a very long time. And this is, like, I've met people like that before. And it's pretty dang accurate to just how something like that messes you up. And she's like actively trying to still kind of be normal too at the same time. It's such a good performance.
But yeah, so Claudia, for reasons that we don't know yet, hates her father that are unknown. So we see her at the beginning of the movie just picking up some random guy at the bar, and then she runs into uh, Officer Jim Curring, who's another one of our characters, and her story arc is going on a date with Jim Curring and freaking out because of all the stress that she's under, where she wants to try to make a good impression of him, but she's worried about what he'll think about her. Um, she's probably thinking about her relationship with her father and why she hates him so much. And I mean, the second to last scene of the movie is her like running out of the date that she's on with Jim Curring, John C. Riley's character. Um, and all that like neurotic energy is so it was really hard to watch because it's not that it was like a bad performance or bad writing, but it's just so like difficult and like sad to watch someone who's just so messed up. It was really yeah.
It's like for me, you just want to hold her and tell her like it's okay. Like the whole movie, you just want to be like it's okay. Like things will get better, but you can't really do that. And that's kind of like how John C. Riley, like again, it's an intentional choice, but it's frustrating to watch just how oblivious John C. Riley is to all of this because it is very obvious, but he is just an unintelligent cop. And it kind of leads to some of the funnier moments in the movie, like when he rolls up on her at her apartment and doesn't realize that she's obviously doing cocaine. And it's kind of like a slapstick gag between is he going to find out and is she able to hide it? And then he's like, well, you're playing really loud music. Like, why do you listen to music so loud? Your neighbors don't like that kind of music. It's so silly, but
There
it
was
is heartfelt.
there's a lot of really goofy moments in that, but it was I mean, like it's explained by John C. Riley, like at the introduction of his character, just how like lonely he is and how desperate for connection he is with someone else. So I mean, it's believable that like the moment he sees her and he's smitten with her, that he just like all of the red flags, he just kind of like intentionally like waves away, and then he just like won't leave her apartment. He just like asks her for a cup of coffee.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, he's going to find out, but he doesn't. And I like when I do like when they go on the date. And my favorite scene between them, my favorite shot of their whole arc is when she's just so like she's trying to get the words out because that's her character. And he's like, just say it. And she's like, do you want to kiss me? And he's like, yes, I would, which is you don't expect that out of him either. And then there's the quick dolly zoom into them
Yeah,
kissing.
the zoom in.
It's so well done. And yeah, it's a PTA does that a lot where it's the very impulsive moment of love between two people. I think that's a really good shot in the movie.
Um, and then the only other character we have really to talk about is Stanley and his father.
Yeah, there isn't too much there, but there is a lot of screen time devoted to him. But yeah,
I like Stanley's character. Like being Stanley is under a ton of pressure and he has to perform. And I mean, like he just kind of like breaks.
Yeah.
He really does. And it's kind of it's a little sad to watch. It's a little funny to watch because of the other characters.
did you piss your pants? No, no, I
No.
didn't. I didn't piss my pants. Stop saying that.
I like Stanley's character actually a lot.
He's a great
Because
character, but
when I was watching it, I was thinking about the I don't know if it was commenting on this, but like the exploitation of child stars, especially ones that are talented. And like and you know, luckily for Stanley, he kind of like realizes what's happening. Like he knows what's going on and he actually gets to stand up for himself towards the end. Uh so I thought that was an interesting thing to do is to comment on the exploitation of children, especially, but especially with his relationship with his dad, who should be the one person that's protecting him, that clearly isn't protecting him, and like using him for fame and things like that. So, and I also like the juxtaposition between the Donnie Smith and Stanley because they're basically the same characters, but Stanley stands up for himself while Donnie ends up being, that, weak character who doesn't stand up for himself. So I did like those two like juxtaposed against each other.
yeah, his relationship with his dad is one that's hard to watch because like his dad, every time he's talking to Stanley, he's very direct. He's like, "Why can't you do better? Why can't you do better?" But every time he's talking to any other character, he's like, "That's my son. I love
Yeah.
him." And it's so crazy.
Dad went the Nickelodeon route.
I mean, I empathize with Stanley a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like being someone that is like has some kind of gift, but he's not able to do what he wants with it, and he's under
Mhm.
so much pressure by people that aren't him to dictate. They're trying to dictate everything about his life, and like his dad is saying, "You have to play on this show so I can win all my
Mhm.
bets that I'm making. That you're going to keep winning." He can't even go to the bathroom. Like all the
Yeah.
showrunners and stuff are like, "No, you can't go to the bathroom."
Yeah, he's controlled by everyone.
Yeah, so I mean, like, it's funny to think about, but him peeing his pants in like the midpoint of the movie is the first step of him like taking control of his own life.
Yeah.
And then once he does that, like he has the courage to stand up to Jimmy and be like, "No, Jimmy, I'm not going up there. Choose someone else to do it because I'm not doing it."
Yeah.
And at the end of the movie, when his dad is asleep, he goes in there and wakes him up, and he's like, "Dad, you have to be nicer to me." And then his
It
dad
is
completely blows him
Yeah.
off.
That scene was a little weird watching it because it feels very adult for such a young child to just go up to their parent and just be like, "You need to be nice to me." Because for a kid, it'd be probably like realistically a little bit more unhinged because children are unhinged. But that felt so adult for such a young kid to say that. I did like that scene actually. Not now that you brought that up, Austin.
I felt like Stanley was trying to gain control of his life, and then at the end, he just like he goes to confront his father, and his father blows him off, and then he just like reverts back to his old self as he breaks into the library again and just starts studying again. But this time when I watched it, I got more of the feeling that he's going back to the library to study, not because he has to or wants to, because other people want him to. He's doing it because he wants to.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm surprised I didn't feel that way all the previous times I've watched it. I always just felt that like he just kind of just reverts back to himself, and it was almost like you see him trying to take control of his own life, but the movie is kind of just like, don't don't worry about controlling everything that happens to you. It's like kind of like what happens with Tom Cruise's character, where he spends his entire life like trying to have such like rigid control over what's going on, and then he breaks down and just kind of like accepts it, and he's able to let go of all that grief that he has.
Yeah, I also, until most recent viewing, forgot that the movie kind of ends on that up note just because the rest of the movie is so heavy. But it does end on that up note. But also, that's another critique that I have in the movie. Not that it ends on the positive note, but because it's like a 5 minute wrap up to a 3 hour movie. And I just think it could have been done better because I think, as I was saying off camera, there's parts of the movie that really drag. And so I think he could have better used that time in making a more satisfying ending rather than like a really quick 5 minute wrap up, like a wrap up that's just as quick as the introduction to all the characters are in the very beginning. I think the characters deserve better.
Um, I know you guys were kind of complaining about the middle of the movie, how it dragged. Because I mean they're playing that score throughout, and it's kind of quick cutting a lot between the characters while they're all kind of at the peak of their like the amount of stress that they're under, right? And I mean, I feel like he did it just to like jam the tension level of the movie as high as possible.
Hmm.
So I mean, he's skipping around so he doesn't progress too far in one character's story. And he's trying to keep them all at the same like tension level as far as long as he can before he starts breaking it down in the second half.
You're probably right. What I found when I was researching was that PTA um, structured this movie like he was inspired by the song "Day in the Life" off Sergeant Pepper's. And if you can recall that song, it's like really chaotic and builds and then just drops off and then builds again. And so, yeah, I mean, that's if we're going to go off that, it is kind of how Magnolia is structured because, yeah, there are lots of moments where it is quick cutting and thematic similarities that are linking the scenes. And then it drops off kind of for that middle and then builds back up again, especially with the raining frogs bit. So, yeah, I mean, it does follow that kind of created chaotic structure for a bit.
Um, oh, there's one more character that we didn't talk about, and he this character only interacts with two other characters in the movie, and I don't remember what his name is. I don't know if they ever say what his name is, but it's the little kid that raps to Jim
Oh
Curry.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was trying so hard to like analyze the rap that he gave to what's that Jim or no, sorry, with the police
Jim
officer.
Curry, yeah.
Jim Curry. Yeah. Because then at the end he's like, I just told you all you needed to know. And I was like, oh crap, I missed it. What was it? And I tried to go back and listen to it again. I was like, I don't understand it. I was like, whatever.
I didn't get it either. I had to look it up and be like,
What
what the hell is this kid talking about?
what
So
what?
Whoa, little man.
Oh.
We can do without that word.
Yeah.
so there's a big like interpretation of that rap where it's kind of the kid is explaining everything that like he's talking about all the other characters of the movie, right? So he's talking about like body stackers and stuff. That's Phil because Phil is like a hospice nurse. That's what he does is he takes care of people until they die. Um, and then Linda, who is the cheater, she cheated on Earl Partridge, so she's the dick tutor.
Mm. Could
There
also
was
be
a bunch of
Claudia, I guess.
yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Or and then there's I no Claudia is the one that's because there's a line about someone being like strung out on drugs and
Yeah, that would, yeah.
she's trying to like pull someone off of the shelf, right? So he's talking about Claudia and Jim and their relationship, where Jim is lonely and like he's looking for love. I mean, you hear him like call into like the radio station and stuff, where he like puts it's the '90s version of Tinder essentially.
Yeah, yeah. Hard to listen to.
But but I mean, it's that relationship that pulls him out of his shell and makes him more comfortable again, right? So I mean, you could there are little bits where you can kind of point and be like, oh, he is this kid who is talking about every other major character in the movie. Why is he doing that? Um,
I have
and
not looked enough into the kid. He is definitely, yeah, like he just gets, when I think about this movie, I never think about the kid, but he kind of is like the like omniscient narrator of everything that's going on, like you said. And it's
right,
a kind of bizarre thing to include in this movie.
and then he shows up again when Jim Curring loses his gun. It's actually the kid runs up and steals it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that's why they can't find it. And then he calls an ambulance to save Lydia after he steals all the money in her wallet. But
Yeah. What did, so yeah, you looked into the rap. What the fuck is he talking about when he says the worm?
yeah,
Yeah.
so I didn't get it. So I had to do a little bit more research. So there is it's some stuff that they cut out of the movie. So they were going to like really kind of go deeper into the worm subplot of the murderer, but they ended up like cutting it out probably because the movie is 3 hours long as it is.
Yeah.
And ultimately it doesn't really matter who the worm is. So I mean they probably made the right call.
That one just always confused me. It was like, what?
But
Also, like,
yeah,
what is this kid doing in the movie?
but so he's supposed to be the grandson of the black lady that Jim Curring arrests at the beginning of the movie.
Beginning.
Yeah, yeah,
And then you see him again where like this like hooded figure walks into the room with like a ton of kids like crowded around the TV watching the game show, and he comes and just grabs him and pulls him out.
I don't think I ever noticed that. Yeah.
Really? Oh.
Yeah, it's part of that like the part in the middle where it's like super tense and like the music's playing, the score is playing. Um, I don't know. I mean, like I think the movie works as is. I think it would be more interesting to see where that subplot goes, but I don't know what they would have replaced it with, really, other than just throw all of it in and make the movie like 20 minutes longer.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the way the character's structured, it probably would have been just another mechanism to interlink all of the stories. But I guess, yeah, it probably would have needed more time for a device like that.
So we talked about it a little bit while we were offline. So there's a multiple parts of the movie where you kind of feel Paul Thomas Anderson as a director kind of just for the characters in the movie who are living that movie as their real life. Some of them act kind of weird when you're watching it. So for example, or they say kind of like really like meta things about what's going on. And I read it as kind of the Paul Thomas Anderson as the director is like almost like playing God a little bit. So he's having Philip Seymour Hoffman talk to the guy trying to get in touch with Frank T.J. Mackey. He's like, "This is the part of the movie where you help me now," and
Oh
then,
yeah.
or having like the kid make the rap about omnisciently like talking about all the other characters of the movie that we're about to follow. Or what was the other big one that we talked about?
Uh, Kind of how, well, we'll get into the more overt reference to just acts of God, but in that
Oh
moment,
yeah, the lady that Jim Curring arrests at the beginning of the movie, where she's
yeah,
like, "Don't go into my hallway now. Don't go into my
Closet.
bedroom now. Don't look inside my closet where
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
hiding the
she
dead guy."
leads him directly there. Yeah,
Right.
I see like how Donnie Smith gets hit by the frog at the end, and then that's what breaks his teeth, and then he finally gets the braces he always wanted. That's definitely act of God type moment.
Or We were also discussing this offline, but the scene with all the characters singing the song. What's the name of the song?
It's something up by Amy Mann
Right.
because Amy
So
Mann does like all the songs throughout the movie.
so that scene in particular is kind of interesting. So you can, I mean, yes, I mean it's a thematic song that they're singing, right? But you can see it as they're all singing the same song because that's what the director wants them to sing, or the hand of God wants them to sing, or just like with everything else, it's one of those things that happens. I mean, it's unlikely, but you could have 10 people that are all in the same area who are mostly unconnected, all singing the same song in unison that has like a metatextual um read on their situation in life at the moment.
And then there's obviously the big this is a thing that happens moment when everything that's been kind of foreshadowed in the movie that oh like the weather is getting bad, oh there's a 82% chance of rain today, and it leads to the rain of frogs that happens at the end. And that's another instance of this is kind of an unexplainable phenomena that affects all of our 10 characters here and interlinks them at least in that way.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, these characters spend the entire movie being loosely linked through relationships that they have through other characters and kind of like a web, or some of them, they never interact with another character. Right. But through these relationships that they have, they're like four steps away from being related to another character. And then at the very end, this act of God, this rain of frogs happens, and it affects all of them. Um, yeah, the rain of frogs is kind of a weird scene. I remember the first time I watched the movie, and I was just like, "What the fuck is this? Why is it raining frogs? It
Yeah.
doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense." But I mean, I kind of enjoy it because I mean, I showed it to my girlfriend recently. It was kind of funny to watch her have that exact reaction. She was like, "It's part of the theme of the movie. It's this is one of those things that happens, and you know, life will throw something crazy at you, but you still have to deal with it and adapt." And you watch how that frog rain like affects all the characters either positively or negatively. So, for example, it causes Claudia and Rose, who are the daughter and wife of Jimmy Gator, to connect
Mhm.
for however long it's been. But I mean, it makes it seem as though it's been a long time. Um, and then Claudia's able to get some kind of solace because of that connection that she was able to make with her mother. Um, it, Jimmy, it's almost ironic. Jimmy Gator is about to kill himself because of the weight of all the regret that he has, and then the frog falls through like the weather pane at the top of his house, and it knocks the gun out of his hands. It makes him kind of just give up, and now he's got to live with the weight of the guilt of everything that he's done. Um, the the funniest one is Donnie, who even after trying to go back and do the right thing, after he stole the money from his boss, he's like, "No, this is wrong. I can't do this." And then as he's trying to climb up the light pole to get back into the building, the frog hits him in the face and he falls down and breaks all of his teeth,
Yeah.
which is especially ironic because the entire reason why he was stealing the money is so he could buy braces that he didn't even need anyways.
But now he needs them.
Yeah. Um, it, the With Officer Jim Curring, um, he at the beginning of the movie was talking about how he has to deal with all this bullshit because he's a cop every day, and you see him doing it throughout the movie, and then he finally gets that chance to do that one right thing where he grabs Donnie. He's like, "We're gonna put the money back, and then I'm just gonna let you go. I'm not going to arrest you." And him doing that, his gun that he mysteriously dropped just falls out of the sky and hits the ground again right in front of him. And that's what gives him the courage to go back to Claudia afterwards and try to like reaffirm that relationship that he has with her.
Yeah,
Um,
something that I thought that was really cool was when PTA was imagining the movie, the first scene that he saw in his mind, not really a scene, but the first image he saw in his mind was the very last shot of the movie where Claudia finally smiles.
Hmm.
if she looks right at the camera and smiles.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. That was the first. That's the first image he had of the whole movie. He kind of builds it out from there.
That's such a good scene, and it's so cathartic because we had watched Claudia be a wreck the entire movie, and it ends with her like showing happiness for the first time in the movie.
Yeah, I really like her character a lot. I really like her and Donnie Smith because I feel like they're the most they're the most victimized by just all the bad luck that they've had happen in their life by none of their own actions, whereas a lot of the other characters are living with the regret of their actions, but Donnie and Claudia are just victims all throughout, and finally like at the end they have their solace and they have their moment where it looks hopeful.
Um, what else? It the Reign of oh yeah, the Reign of Frogs. Tom Cruise is after that liquid morphine was administered to Earl Partridge, is when Tom Cruise shows up, and he's this is such a heavy scene in the movie, and it's so good. But he breaks down at the sight of his father dying, and he's trying to talk about how pissed he is at his father for abandoning his mother, and but he is unable to get that catharsis because his father is literally just like unconscious. And then when the rain of frogs starts falling, it wakes Earl Partridge up, and they get that like one moment to like look at each other. And Earl Partridge gets to die knowing that his son came to, I wouldn't go as far as to say forgive him, but to make some kind of amends and like get past that. And Tom Cruise gets to look at his father's eyes for like the one last time so he can get that catharsis that he needs. Um, it was who else? Julianne Moore's asleep for it.
But she's
It was
alive.
her ambulance does crash, which was kind of funny. But who else is affected by it?
How is Stanley affected? I forget.
Well, that's the scene.
It
Yeah,
does say
yeah.
where he
So,
goes to his dad, right?
well, it's after
No,
because he breaks
no,
into the library and
yeah,
he's
he's
in the
like just
library
sitting
when
there in
stuff's
the
happening.
library.
Ooh, okay.
What
And
did happen though? Because I
well, so he's sitting there studying, and that this is the point where I kind of like made the flip that I was talking about on Stanley's ending.
yeah.
Was this when I rewatched it and I looked at the scene where he just kind of he's not confused or in shock or
Yeah.
afraid of what's going on. He just kind of looks at it. He's like, "Oh, this is just something that happens. I know
Mhm.
that, and I know that because I studied it because I want to,
Mhm.
and I'm doing.
I- Is he by chance reading the Bible when he's in the library when that's happening?
I don't know what he was reading. I don't remember. It would be pretty funny if he was,
That's
but
what I'm saying. Like, because if he's reading that passage in Exodus about the frogs as the frogs are happening,
yeah, no. So I mean, I remember a lot of movie critics did not like the end of Magnolia
yeah,
because a lot of movie critics were expecting like a really tight conclusion to the movie where all of their storylines are wrapped up in a connected way. And instead, Paul Thomas Anderson just goes like, "No, here's some crazy shit that happens, but I'm still going to make it like they all still get their ending and their catharsis in one way or another." But
they do. Yeah,
which I kind of like that he did that because it makes the movie really unique. Yeah, I don't know of a whole lot of movies where it ends with frogs falling from the sky.
Yeah, it's like you got to watch these other hyperlink movies. That's kind of like the genre that this is, where all the interlinking stories connect, and it deals with the juggling act of the characters. Because yeah, Magnolia is definitely the most metaphorical that I've seen of these types of movies. Happiness is the other one, and then Shortcuts. Um, but yeah, Magnolia is definitely the unique one where it uses all those references to the Bible and coincidence, circumstance, and how those uncontrollable forces guide a lot of our life. And you kind of got to accept that.
Yeah, you just have to go with it. Like there's no point in trying to control it. You just have to accept it. Who else? Oh yeah, no, the so you want to be technical about it. We never got an admission that Jimmy Gator like molested his daughter at the end.
Correct. He never, because he's talking to his wife and he's like, I honestly don't remember. I, I just don't remember. But he
But
still feels the guilt, obviously. He tries to
yeah,
kill
like,
himself.
Oh no.
he obviously did it, but he never said that he did it. But then in the scene where Rose runs into Claudia's apartment and they're hugging on the floor, it zooms up and away from them to the painting, and in the corner of the painting, there's words, and it says, "And it did happen."
Yeah.
Have I never noticed that? I don't. Oh my God. Wow. That's pretty cool.
That was a pretty cool shot. Because I remember, like, I was thinking about it because they were just talking about how crazy it is and unbelievable it is, and then it zooms up on, but it did happen. And I always assumed that it was just, yeah, frogs actually did fall from the sky. But no, it's what
Mhm.
I think it is it's talking about the sexual abuse that she experienced as a child, and then
Yeah.
the reconciliation of the estranged mother and daughter, and then the horrible thing that she is that fucked her up so bad. It did happen.
These are things that happen.
Um, one more uh, one more thing about the Rain of Frogs is if you watch the movie, there's a bunch of like hidden like the number 82 is hidden throughout the movie. So I think the very first time you see it is the scene where the guys are getting hung. One of them is wearing the number 82 on his chest. And then the third short story about the kid who jumps off the building and gets shot as he's falling. If you look on the ground as he's walking to the ledge, there's the number 82 written out in wire and cables. And then I think it's the first weather report. It says 82% chance of rain.
Mhm.
And in the Bible, Exodus 8:2 is the line in the Bible where Moses is saying, like, if you don't stop messing with us, like there's gonna be a rain of frogs on you.
Yeah. I think it took me a while to realize that kind of overarching theme that PTA is really trying to push with this movie, that like coincidence, circumstance, all these strange events are more driving factors in our life than we could ever really know. And yeah, I kind of like the movie even a little bit more for that, even though I do have the more times I watch this movie, I do see flaws, as I've already discussed, but still at the end of the day, still one of my favorite movies. It's just such a tour de force to watch this movie, especially after the intro, because the intro is so kinetic and so concise with how we meet all of our characters and almost immediately understand what we need to understand from them right off the bat.
Funniest moments in the movie to you, Kurt.
Uh, I'm Jimmy Gator. I kind of kind of just the moment where Tom Cruise completely shuts down and she's like, "What are you doing right now?" And he's like, "I'm silently judging you." It's such a beta move. Like, I think that's funny. Um, yeah, off the top of my head, I think that's probably the funniest part for me.
Um, there are so many things that made me chuckle. I think the funniest one to me is towards the beginning, Phil is running to get the pain medicine for Earl, and he spills a bunch of it on the ground. And there's a very short scene where one of the dogs in the house like eats a bunch of the pain pills. And then at the very end of the movie, where they're moving Earl's body out after he dies, they're also carrying a dog's body with them.
When the cop goes into the lady's apartment and he finds the body and he's like, "What's this?" And she's like, "That's not mine." That
It's
shit
like,
was so funny.
it's like, you know, this man, is he your boyfriend?
Yeah, I was like
He did.
that. Yeah, that whole scene was so funny. Like, oh my God, because it felt like the classic overreaching cop scenario where the cop basically just forces his way in there. I just thought it was really good. And then the other scene when Stanley was, after he peed his pants, like the other kids who did absolutely nothing were getting so angry with him.
Oh
I
my
was
god.
laughing. Yeah, I was laughing because he was being so mean to the one kid who was carrying the team. I,
Yeah.
And
it
he
got
pissed his pants.
yeah.
Stop it. Stop.
It
Shut
was
up. No, I
so
didn't.
funny.
Shut
Yeah,
up.
it's like the one kid that's carrying your team, and you're basically just outing him. I like, oh my God, it was so funny. But yeah, those are the two scenes and also the dog dying was also that was pretty funny, honestly.
Or
Um,
when Jimmy's talking to one of the producers and he's like, "I'm fucking hammered." When
um,
Jim loses his gun and he fucking cries, he's like, "They're
That
gonna
was
be
not
so
funny. That
mean to
was so
me.
sad.
They're gonna be so mean to me at work."
I mean, I love it that like there's so much humor in this movie, but very like very not like most of it is not like very ha like slapstick kind of funny, except for Jim in Claudia's apartment. That's just like when he's
Yeah,
like
that was
he's knocking on the door and he drops his baton and has to
yeah.
run down the stairs to go grab it.
Yeah, but it is totally consistent with the rest of the movie because right off the bat, PTA is like, "This is going to be pretty outlandish, but just roll with it because weirder stuff has happened in life."
Yeah, I mean, like I kind of think of the humor kind of like with last week's episode, Another Round,
Yeah,
when there's like the principal was like one of the teachers is drinking on school camp on property, and they're like, I don't know who it is, and then one of them shows up like drunk and super late, and they're all like,
yeah,
I have no idea who this person could be.
yeah. They're like, "Fuck, who is it?" And Mads Mikkelsen is stumbling through the crowd and then hits his face on the door. Yeah,
It was kind of the same kind of humor as that, where you could be read either way, but most of the time it's kind of like a little funny.
I mean, you got any parting shots for the movie? Who's your favorite character, Austin?
That's tough. I like so many of the characters, and I like all of them for so many different reasons. I mean, I think that Tom Cruise and Julianne Moore have like the most like emotional, um, um, the most like emotional parts of the movie. I relate to Stanley a lot as a character. I like the character of Donnie the Smith the most. And stuff. I'd probably say Donnie, I guess.
Uh, honestly, like when I was watching the movie, all I really wanted to see was Stanley or Frank. Those are the two characters where I kind of feel bad saying this, but like every time a different one would start going, I'd be like, okay, I'm just waiting until I see Frank or Stanley again. I mean, I did like Donnie, obviously, but those are the two characters that I was kind of waiting for, honestly, when I was watching the movie. So.
Yes. I'm trying to think. Yeah, because for me, it's like every time I see Linda Partridge, I was like, oh, brother. Like, why can't we just see
This
Tom Cruise
guy's
being Tom Cruise right now?
he's not even playing a character. PTA was just like, all right, Tom, just go up there and be yourself.
Well, yeah, because Tom Cruise, like, apparently reached out to Paul Thomas Anderson after seeing Boogie Nights. And of course, Tom Cruise is like, yo, you got to get me a movie role in your next one. And then, yeah, PTA, being the smart guy he is like, okay, Tom Cruise character. Like,
Yeah, I mean, like the other one that was very obviously written for the actor was Philip Seymour Hoffman's character. I mean, the guy's name is Phil.
yes. And
Um,
yeah, that's another one, Phil Seymour Hoffman, because they collaborated a lot too.
yeah, I mean, they were also super close friends, I think, too.
Yeah,
Before,
he told PTA, he's like, I just he explained the character exactly the way it's written. He's like, I just want unwaveringly supporting, overly empathetic character, and that's what he is. It's just, again, like I said, I think he could have been developed more, but it's, I mean, he's fine. He's definitely a good character. Yeah, I mean, I think that just about wraps it up. This is a gargantuan movie. It's a 3 hour long movie and it's all characters. But I think that's why it's great because we like for the most part, we like all these characters or we can relate to them with the things that they're suffering through. And it's a great drama because of that. Yeah, I think it does a very good job of juggling all that throughout.
yeah, and I think, yeah, no, it's the cinematography is great. One of my favorite shots of the movie is just when Stanley first shows up to the studio and the camera is zooming around past all the people in the studio, following them through when they're walking to the stage. And then it just like ends up in Jimmy's office and he's getting hammered.
Yes, I I'm glad you mentioned that because real quick, I love the way PTA shoots movies, especially like Boogie Nights and Magnolia. They're very similar, where there's lots of dolly shots that the camera's just going right towards something, and it's like the scene that I'm thinking of where it's not even anything interesting. It's when Stanley gets into the car and he gets dropped off at school, and then it's the dolly shot into him getting into the car, and then it pulls back and he's leaving the car going to school. It's a
Mhm.
very not interesting moment that is made really interesting with how he moves the camera for it. And he's so good at that. And then yeah, the kiss between Claudia and Jim is a beautifully shot one as well.
Or oh yeah, when the frog falls from the sky and knocks the gun out of Jimmy Gator's hand, it you follow it as it's falling through. That was really cool. Um, yeah, no, this movie is a fantastic movie. It's I highly recommend it. It's super emotional. It's about regrets and your relationships with other people, um, and like the grief that you have from horrible things happening to you, and accepting it and moving forward with it.
My final message.
Goodbye.